Hi everyone. Fewer things must cause more hurt to any woman in the world than being betrayed by her husband. When you are betrayed not only in the terms of your marriage, but also actually turned over to civil authorities, that must be even worse. When you are betrayed and then have to see 3 of your sons brutally abused and killed, that must be a horror that few can imagine. However, on August 21st, we celebrate the memory of Saint Vassa of Edessa. Vassa had to endure all of these things. She lived at the time of the godless emperor Maximian in the Roman Empire. And this was in the late 200s. We don't know the exact dates. But we know that she came from Christian lineage. But yet somehow she was married to a priest of the idols. Again, we don't know how this happened, but indeed it did, and she attempted to be a loyal wife, even bearing this man 3 children whom she loved dearly. They were all brought up as Christians, albeit it must have been a very difficult thing considering the opposition of her pagan husband, who perhaps did not even realize that this was happening right under his nose. However, eventually he did find out, one way or the other, and so he took his wife and betrayed her to the local pagan magistrate, saying that she was a Christian, and in fact, she admitted such. But this local magistrate, trying to get at her the best way that he could, decided instead to do that most horrendous of things, torture her children. The children, Theognios, Agapios, and Pistos, well, we don't know what their ages were, but they had to be sufficiently advanced according to the brave way that they fought off these tortures, probably in their early to late teens. The first one they took before Saint Vassa, and they hung him up upside down and began tearing at his flesh. The second was even more cruel, as they flayed him from his neck down through his chest. The third one also endured the breaking of virtually every bone in his body. At the last, again, in full sight of Saint Vassa, they beheaded each one of them. Now you might think that a woman normally in such circumstances would be absolutely out of her mind with grief, with someone who just couldn't stand what she was seeing and would have begged that her children be released and that she would do whatever the authorities wanted her to do. However, in these early days of Christianity, when there were so many martyrs and so many who were absolutely devoted to Jesus Christ and would not betray him in any way, St. Vassa instead encouraged each of her sons to endure the contest of martyrdom because she had firm faith that the end result would be a heavenly abode with all of the greatest of the saints and martyrs for all eternity. After the death of these 3 children, they took St. Vassa herself and slowly admitted her to all sorts of tortures, including fire, including throwing her into water, including all sorts of various forms of torment where they tried to beat her arms and her legs severely. They were quite creative back in those days in terms of ways that they wanted to get someone to acquiesce to their desires or else to die. But St. Vassa was able to withstand all of these things. Finally, they took her and threw her out into the ocean. But this was only after they were so aggravated with her, because after going from Edessa into Macedonia, they took her into the temple of Zeus, whereupon she took the statue there and hurled it to the ground. But even in the sea, It is said that the Lord protected her, and that 3 men, often considered to be her 3 reposed sons, lifted her up out of the water as on a throne and set her in a dry place. But yet, once the magistrate heard of this as well, they had her arrested once again, and finally she too was honored with the same sort of death as her sons, and was beheaded. So many times we hear stories like this of these early martyrs, and it just astounds us. We think that can't possibly be anything that any human being could endure. But yet, again, in those early centuries of the faith, which was constantly under persecution for the first 300 years, we really don't have any idea of the grace of the Holy Spirit that was poured out upon these various martyrs in testimony to the reality of Jesus Christ, with in mind the idea of the spreading of this gospel throughout the whole world. God was very gracious to those early martyrs, and many of them, like St. Ignatius of Antioch, even sought death, did not want to be deprived of the contest, because he knew that he would immediately be translated to be with his Lord with full assurance. Perhaps in our day we are not quite so eager for this sort of martyrdom, although it still does happen in differing places. But the point is that we should all admire St. Vassa and her 3 sons for their fervent dedication to the faith of Christ, and pray that by her prayers that perhaps we can attain even just a small portion of the faith, hope, and love that she had. Bye.